So the first one is perspective or the size. Okay, size. So let's say you have a box. You can sketch along with me. And then this line you have here. So things along the lines you can draw. So this boxes meet this corner, right? So when you draw your objects, make sure that they just go along the lines, the angle lines. That's one of the things that will help you make things look that is near and that gives you depth and dimensionality to what you're looking. The other one is the near and far, similar to this one. So you have a box like this. It's a line of horizon. The things which are the front looks much bigger, obviously, and then the buildings on the back will look really small. There could be some really tall buildings, but even then, those things look really small. Right? So, near and far is another strategy that you could potentially use. Perspective is one, near and far strategy is another thing that you could use. The other thing that people use a lot when they sketch even portraits or buildings is the line density or line thickness. So very thin line, thick line, right? Line thickness, or you can just give one side thin line, and the other side is thick line. It gives a lot of dimensionality and depth just by changing thickness of the line. Rather than going everything same line, if you change the density and the thickness of the width of the line, it gives a lot of dimensionality. So this is the third strategy for you to think about when you draw. Think about this line thickness as an important thing for you to think about. Right? The other thing that gives dimensionality is overlapping things. Things that are overlapping with each other. So even the boxes that we saw in the buildings, when they were overlapping with each other, it gives a lot of dimensionality. That's another strategy for you to think about. Right. Another common technique people use is two-dimensional versus three-dimensional. So rather than just going flat like this, if you add a little bit of instead of flat box, instead of an arch, a normal arch, if you look at it from an angle, you can see a portion of the wall that is there. So that gives a little bit of dimensionality to it, right? So everything that you're noticing, can you look at what is the three-dimensionality of it? What does the side looks like? Is another strategy that you could use. Another thing people use a lot is things which are far out is kind of very light. It doesn't look dark. It's kind of very light, low contrast. Things as it comes closer, it has a little bit of contrast, and then as things come closer, things are much more
Contrast.
darker. So even if watercolors, you will see the objects which are in the front, you will see things are much darker actually. Things in the background are you give a light wash and then things are very light, right? So you can see people play a lot with contrast when they play with the dimensions, right? So that's another strategy that you could use, contrast. And even having a simple things like this, you have simple 3 little circles, but if you just put a line in the back and then just put it just changes the whole thing. You give dimensions just by adding more things to the back. Right? So these are some examples that you could follow. So I'll share it out later on with you guys, but some of the things for you guys to think about. What I try to do is I try the most simplest form strategies I provided, but people use this again and again and again. So when you start doing things, when you ask yourself, what are some of the things that I need to think about? Line thickness, overlapping, things which I can place it in the front, things I can place it in the back. If you think along those lines, then it gives a lot of dimensionality and depth to the things that you're doing. So if you have an object that is standing here, then adding a little bit of shadow to it, and then that also gives a dimension, some depth to it, right? Okay, so with this knowledge that you have, let's do some exercises. Okay. What we will do is, no, I can pass it along. I can just, just people share with what you have and then you can do it. If you don't have it, then you can also see this reference image and do it. Right? This is a very simple drawing by an architect called Gordon Cullen. Simple box. The big lines that are here. First start with the horizon line, so I'm going to draw this one. You can see this one is, you can see it's kind of following the rule of third. This artist did not put this line in the middle, so he kind of placed it down below. That's interesting. And the big lines are here. He didn't draw all the details of all the windows. He just kept it very simple, bare bone. Right? And you can also see, once you have this big details, you also have this door that is here. Okay. And there's some small windows here. And you can see some lines on the floor, which gives this nice dimensionality and depth, this tiles that are converging out like this. And if you notice this horizontal lines, you can see that the distance between these two things are smaller, but as it progresses, it gets bigger. right? So it starts off really small like this. You can see this width is much bigger compared to this width. You can see how a simple line where you're spacing it out, it kind of makes it really interesting. And then there's one more building behind it, not much details. Stop here. And then there are a few people out here. If you make these people look really small, then the building looks really big. You make the people stand here. This is a very interesting, simple structure. You can see a whole bunch of dark area here. So the line of horizon is pretty much here. Then you can see one tall building here, and then there's a pillar. And then you can see another building that comes. There's one line here, there's one line here, and then you can see the line thickness. Some of the examples I talked about, this is beautifully illustrated here. You can see this, the thickness of this one. You can see how the source of light and then the light falls, and then you can see how this one is kind of darkened, but it's kind of a little thicker version of it. Right? You can see some examples. So if I make this little darker here, and then this floor is kind of thin, but then and then you have some vertical lines that are going like this. Even this vertical lines, if you notice, as it progresses to the edge, the distance is smaller, but here you can see the distance is a little bigger, right? So, not all the doors are drawn here. Just a representation of few doors that are shown here. So you don't have to go into all the details that are shown here. This makes it easy and fun for you to draw also, so you're not in the pressure of finding every single detail. Right? So urban sketching should all be fun for you guys. Not be stressing out. If you're stressing out, then probably you're not doing it the right way. So probably there's a beautiful statue up there, but the artist decided not to draw everything. So it's just a little bit of representation of what it looks. Arches. Even in the arches, you can see this. You can see the edges of the arch that we talked about earlier. So we decided to shade this part here, and even if you have a window like this, the edge edge of the window is seen, and then the other things are all shaded. Right? So and the light source ends here, and then yes, you things going here, and then I don't know whether you guys can notice here or not, but this shown here. And by adding shadow to this corner, it just brings out all this. So one line, if you add more lines, then the shadow going here, the shadow going here, and then the shadow of this whole, then you see here. Of course, this whole place is darkened, and then once it darkens, the thing down below it kind of lights up. And artists, when they do watercolors, all the dark areas, they kind of use cool colors, which is either blue or grayish tone. And then the things which are really bright, they use warm colors, which are like red, yellow, orange, kind of this tone, where these things are all really bright. And then there's a little bit of sky, and then they leave a lot of white space, so there's not much color. So that when all the things are covered up, you can imagine how beautiful this drawing will look like. Right? So a simple, quick sketch. Right? So very small thumbnail, no much details, but you can quickly see how this one looks like.
Just color pencils.
Yeah, just color pencils. Right. How about this one? Guys can give this a shot. Give this a try.